Hello, friends. Tanya here with the September 2025 Spellbinders Club Kits of the Month, and the theme this month is Charmed Season. We're going to start with the small die of the month, Harvest Magic, and all of these are so adorable. Oh my gosh. So we have this cute little jack-o'-lantern, and it is definitely a cute jack-o'-lantern, and it has some three-dimensional features to it that really bring it to life. There is an element that you can glue to the insides of the eyes and the mouth that look like the thickness of the pumpkin wall showing through. I chose to do just a couple of tones of orange here, peachy orange, to create the look of the cut out pumpkin pieces. And then there's a backer for it. There is a score line along each of those insert pieces to help you line those up evenly so that it has the same depth on the wall of the pumpkin on all the parts. Then I just glue that to the backer. There's also a pumpkin lid that has the stem and the pumpkin lid that you cut out. Oh, I almost forgot. There is a little tongue that you can put on your or in your little pumpkin that really gives it some animation. And there are some little cheeks that you can glue to his face too. And I did, of course, choose to make those matching the tongue in this light pink color. That is probably chiffon on the color wheel cardstock. If I'd have, I'm using from my stash here for these colors, but some equivalents would be fawn for the craft cardstock, carrot for the purple, or sorry, not purple, orange, peridot for the green, and chiffon for the pink. Then for our cute little kitty, I did use some of the Onyx Treasured cardstock. I want the kitty to have green eyes, and this backer piece is for the eyes, and it conveniently scoops up a little bit to avoid the nose, which is this little heart-shaped fallout piece. I'm just going to take this circle to back the nose, and now we have green eyes and a pink nose. You could make those eyes whatever color you would want, and that is as well. Nope, I'm sorry. There are little die cut pieces to add to the insides of the ears. Now these are really little and they do look great on the die cut, but if you wanted to skip them, you can do that too and it would still look adorable. There's also a cute little pumpkin hat for our kitten. So we can put that right on top of his head. Makes him fit in so perfectly with the jack-o'-lantern in the die set. Along with the cat and the two pumpkins, there are a bunch of other elements. We also have a ghost and a skull, and we have one die that cuts out a backer for each of these, just this oval. So we're going to put it the long way up and down and the long way sideways for the skull and the ghost respectively. I'm just knocking off some of those paper hairs. I did use onyx and antique treasured cardstocks for those in the pearl metallic. We also have some flowers. We have the a larger flower that cuts two at once, as I recall. And I cut this from two different yellows, like beeswax and Tuscan. And I'm using the rose gold. I think that's the rose gold collection. Yes, of treasured cardstock to add the accents to these flowers. And there is a die that cuts three different flower centers and a couple other things, I think, if I recall correctly. There's also a stem that you can use for each of these flowers. And there are 4 leaves that you can use to add to your collection or to your projects. There's also this berry branch or flower bud branch, however you want to think of it. And I use some metallic matte metallic. I think that's the matte metallic rose gold here. I did use some of the rose gold glitter cardstock too. So those are all of the elements for the small die of the month. Then we have the large die of the month, which is called Acorn Acres. And look at this. It makes some really cute items. We've got these sentiments that say Happy Thanksgiving and Happy Fall from us all. We've got two different sizes of acorns, and there is an acorn nut part and the cap. And I cut those from, I think that is truffle and acorn, ironically. Actually, those are not those colors, come to think of it. Anyway, those are great colors that you could use. Then we have our cute little squirrel. Now, squirrels come in so many colors. Where I live, there are red squirrels, gray squirrels, some more brown colored squirrels. Where I grew up, there are black squirrels all over the place. Um, yeah, there's all kinds of colors of squirrels. I Googled uh, images of squirrels and I was amazed at how many different colors there are. I chose to go with a red squirrel, and there are pieces to back this also. Now you're seeing me assemble this from the back. It actually works better if you add glue to the back of the main body and then put it down on top of the backer pieces. You just get things lined up a little more easily that way. I'm trying to make sure that this piece that is the off tone or the second color on his face and his belly doesn't overlap too much and cover his nose. There's another arm you glue to his body on top of all of the other layers, and that enables him to hold on to items. And we have the acorns for him to hold. There's also a two-layered flower that die cuts in one pass, and it has this nice little dotted center. It really reminds me of a sunflower. I did choose to cut it out of a couple of different colors here. This is kind of a orangey red, and I also have it cut out in some yellow. I chose several different colors to cut out all of the foliage, and the foliage in this is beautiful. And then we have an acorn house. There are two layers for the top or the acorn cap here. And I did take, I have some two different tones of brown cardstock here. Actually, three, maybe four. I think there's four tones of brown cardstock here. Anyway, for the detailed piece for the acorn cap, I took the Fallen Acorn Distress mica stain spray and spritzed the detailed piece before I added it to the backer piece. You can see the embossed lines on the acorn body for the house. So we've got our little acorn cap roof. We've got this cute little window that has two layers, and I've used a much lighter and a much darker brown. I wanted the craft cardstock to be the glow of the window. There's some embossed lines on the acorn body that show you where those go also. The door is 1, 2, 3, 5 pieces, I think. It's a really cute door and very easy to assemble. So you put the door on the frame, and then here is a step that you glue onto the lower portion there. And then you have the little window in the door. So you've got the window backer and the window frame. And then you can just glue that to the indentation or the embossed line area on the door. Now I did knock out the fallout piece for the doorknob, and that works out perfect because the doorknob picks up the color of the background. Now when you adhere this, the step extends below the bottom edge of the acorn house, and that gives it some nice perspective. Here is a grounding element for under the acorn house, and it has a nice little indentation. There is a sample of how that could be assembled. Next, we have the gorgeous stitched pumpkin tops. Oh my gosh, 3 different sizes here. We've got the detailed element that adds all of the stitching lines, and then we have the main body. I have the Diamante metallic embroidery thread. Okay, I held off getting this for so long, but I finally caved. And This stuff is delicious. It does not twist and spin like all of the other metallic stuff I've worked with. It is soft and pliable, lustrous. It is a dream to work with. I don't know why I always uh, um, try to make do with what's in my stash when there is something perfect to go to do the job. I was finally forced to resupply myself on metallic thread, and I decided to give the Diamante stuff a try. And yep, I'm sold. We should trust Spellbinders. They do a really good job of researching and figuring out what works best with their products. So now I have a few of the colors of the Diamante thread. You'll be seeing me use those more in the future. I am still going to use the crochet thread, and embroidery floss, of course, works fantastic also. This is a very simple stitching. You just do the pie wedge fan type stitching all the way across for each section, and you could get fancy by adding borders along the interior and the exterior if you wanted. There is a piece that pops in the center where it would, where the pumpkin would be darker because it goes in a bit, and then the stem. And I did cut solid backers for mine. I add glue just to the center and the thread areas, line that up with the pumpkin backer, and I lay something heavy on top while that dries to make sure that it adheres very nicely. And look how adorable that is. I went ahead and did stitching on several pumpkins. So I even did some white and gold ones. There are also acorns in this set. Lots of acorns in the collection this month, and I'm here for it. They are so cute. The mushroom, or sorry, not mushroom, the acorn caps have stitching on them also, just paper stitching. You don't actually thread a needle and run them through this, but I love that stitching detail on the acorn caps. We also have 3 leaves that die cut and a really fun sentiment. We've got this scripty hello and a banner. Hello, gorgeous. I love that sentiment. I have it in a few different ways, and I fall for it every time. Next, we're going to take the sentiments from the Better Press and the Glimmer of the Month. Sketchy Hexie is the Better Press of the month, and Gilded Weave is the Glimmer of the month. I just laid those on my glimmer machine and foiled them with the copper foil that came with the kit this month. Now we're going to take the Sketchy Hexie Better Press of the month, and I'm going to better press this with the Copper Pot Lisa Horton metallic inks on a piece of watercolor cardstock. This is a 5x7 cardstock piece. This is not going to be 5x7 sized. As you can see, it is an A2 sized panel, and it's not I did not figure out a way to make this a repeating pattern, but don't you worry, I'm still going to use this for a 5x7 card. There's also a hexagon die, and you can make a mask with that. You can cut each of those individual hexagons out also. With my mask here, which I just cut from some scrap of pattern paper that I'm not going to use, I like to use my old die cuts with a view paper pads to make envelopes at times, and this was a scrap from that, and it's a nice weight for it. So I'm using some Distress Oxide, or sorry, not Oxide inks. These are Distress inks. Did you know Distress Oxides now come in minis also? I don't know if I'm going to buy them, but man, if I was just starting out, I would have gotten the minis because then I would know if I liked them or not. That's kind of how I high roll. I like to get minis of different inks and see if I like them before I invest in the big ones. Here's the colors I use: Scattered Straw, Shabby Shutters, Spiced Marmalade, Ripe Persimmon, and Antique Linen. Next, we're going to pull in the Autumn Whim Clear Stamp and Die of the Month. I have all of the sentiments lined up on my mini Misty here. I've treated my paper with some anti-static powder bag, and we're going to use VersaFine Clara Nocturne ink to stamp all of these sentiments at once. I like to do a few sheets of sentiments. I think I did four sheets of sentiments for my mass production here. I like to have several sentiments all heat embossed and ready to go. So all I have to do is trim them out, whether it's with the coordinating dies or with my paper trimmer or with another die that I found that works well. Now these sentiments have coordinating dies except for the one-liners. The one-liners, you can use another die to cut those out. I did add clear embossing powder over the top of this, and I did also do the embossing in copper embossing powder and gold embossing powder. And I have a few to choose from. Now for the image, we've got a cluster of little charms that I'm going to stamp twice on this A2 size piece of cardstock. I'm using the Hero Arts Intense Black ink here, and I'm just doing one inking, and because I don't want to have extra ink floating on the top, because I'm going to immediately ink blend these. We're going to use the Club Extra here. This is the Autumn Whim stencil, and it makes it so easy to quickly color several of these elements. Not every one and not perfectly, but we're going to use candied apple, carved pumpkin, mustard seed, shabby shutters, antique linen, and I think that's brush corduroy. And we're going to use those to ink blend all of these different elements. It's pretty easy too. I'm using a small ink blending brushes to quickly add the color to these. Now I do recommend that for the sunflower, you add the ink blending to the center after you do the yellow petals. So I guess I would choose to do this in a different order. And for most of my ink blending, because I did this a bunch, I really love this stamp and stencil combination. I think it is beautiful. Here I'm trying to line up those petals, and you know what? They do not line up perfectly. It's going to be intentionally offset, and it creates a really cute little sunflower. I'm just adding different colors to different areas, and because all of these stencil areas are so far apart, it makes it really easy to use multiple colors and quickly color all of these. Now you can do this little gourd or pumpkin in lots of different colors. I've done a combination of yellow and orange here. I did green and brown in another. You could go with a real sagey green or a kind of a blue color, Hubbard squash, or almost a silvery blue. Now that I have done all of the ink blending, I put it back in the Mini Misty. I have not moved the stamp, and I make sure it lines up properly before I commit to pushing down on it. And I'm using VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink to add the details back to our images. This just really brightens it up. You can take this one step further if you want and add embossing powder to your VersaFine Clair inked areas, but I chose to let them be. Now there are also coordinating dies for all of these colored images, plus a few of the ones that don't get colored in, like some of the leaves and this little twirly seed. Here are the coordinating stamps with the sentiments, and it turns out I put a couple of my sentiments upside down. No big deal. Then we have the stencil of the month. This is gorgeous. It's called Acorns and Oaks, and I am, of course, going to double stencil this. So I have an 8.5 by 5.5 inch piece of white cardstock here, and I did use heavyweight white cardstock. It just holds up so much better. I am using the same color palette as I used on the Autumn Whimsy stenciling. I thought that would be an easy way to keep these things coordinated enough to use together, should I choose to do that. You do not have to color coordinate your products or your projects in order to have success, but when you're doing batch production like I'm doing here, it does make it easier to combine everything and not have to go back and redo things to have a coordinating product. That being said, I love this stencil set. I have no problems repeating this process because it's so fun and I really enjoy watching it come to life. Now you could do completely different colors for your second set of leaves here that nestle together. And the first one I did carved pumpkin and candied apple. Now for my second one, I'm starting out with the mustard seed, and we will come back in with highlights of the carved pumpkin. You can be as creative as you want. These are spaced far enough apart that you could almost make every single leaf a separate color. Now we're going to add the acorn caps, and there are 3 layers to the acorn caps on this stencil set. And it also adds some of the veining on the leaves and some of the branches for the leaves, or stems. There we go, the stems for the leaves. And there is going to be a second grouping. So you have the stems for the first leaf stencil, and then we have the second leaf stencil stems, and we also have this accent layer for the acorn caps. Now I am using a darker ink here for the second layer of for the accent layer of the acorn caps, and later I do this whole inking, same colors on craft cardstock, and instead of a darker color of brown, I use the Simon Hurley Astro Paste in Slippery When Wet, and that turns out gorgeous, and that's what I actually use later. Well, I use this more than once, let's be honest. We're going to use antique linen for the acorn bodies, the nut themselves. And that also adds the leaves, or sorry, the stems and veining for the second layer of leaves. And I did decide to bring in a larger ink blending brush partway through this stenciling because the small one just wasn't doing the job. Look at that, gorgeous. And this month I actually got the wax seal of the month in time to do this for you. This is a beautiful owl, and we also got the must-have wax bead mix in basic. We're going to start using the white and the silver. And of course, I'm going to do my two-tone method. We have a metal palette knife from Spellbinders. I do love this palette knife. It works great for this technique. Now I put my hot wax on the first layer, and I use my warm palette knife and on my warm wax seal, because you have to warm all of those items in order for this to work. I'm using my hot spoon here to scrape off the excess wax off of the palette knife, and I'll put it back on the chimney to get it heated up and let it be easier to clean up. Then once I have my main color of beads melted, I'm going to put my wax seal right in that puddle, and it's a nice oval shape, and look at that. That just wax sealed gorgeous. So we've got white on silver, and then I also did glow in the dark on black and silver on white. Ultimately, I do gold on white and white on gold too, and oh my gosh, there is our glow in the dark owl. He is so cute. Oh my gosh, he really came out well. For our first card, we're going to take the pieced heart die set. I just want that large heart. I use this heart so much. We're also going to use the Patchwork 3D embossing folder of the month. It looks like a patchwork quilt. And we're going to use that same idea. I took a 1¼ inch square die from my stash and cut out a stencil for this. We're going to use old paper, antique linen, lost shadow, and pumice stone inks here to do some ink blending to make this really truly look like a patchwork quilt. So there are repeating patterns of embossing here, and each pattern is going to get a different color. I'm going through and finding each of the patterns of this one and using my stencil to quickly add color just to that area. Now you could use any shape you wanted to do this. I really like a heart shape element on a card front. I think it really conveys warmth and care, and I think they're cute, and they coordinate with so many different themes And this one is just going to be warm and cozy fall type feelings. I liked the neutral tones here. And I am using just one gray blending brush and one brown blending brush. And there is some alteration of the colors here. I started with old paper and now I'm using antique linen. And you can see that the old paper, when I first started inking it, had a little more of a brown tone and less of the green tone that old paper tends to have. And that's okay. I am not actually looking for an exact color match. I just wanted variation in tone. And these kind of give a warm gray tone, even the Lost Shadow and the pumice tone. And the brown just gives a really nice tan quality here. We almost have all of our ink blending done. It's so fun to add different colors. You could make this a lot of different colors. It could be crazy quilt style, like so many colors. It could be rainbow colored, could be all pinks, could be all greens, could be all blues, could be a mix of any of those. You could add little charms to each of those squares over the top to make it look like you have a bunch of panels with extra details on them. I decided to add some pearl luster gilding polish to this. I do like that there is a white border around that. What is that called? Counterpane. Just to add a little extra definition between each of those colors. I have seen people take that embossing folder and cut those squares apart and glue them on. I liked the idea of stenciling. To me, it seemed less fussy and more cohesive, but I bet others are going to make this look just stunning by cutting it apart and gluing them together. I have the gilding polish on there, and that really adds some pop to those textures. Now here we have a white and gold wax seal with the owl. I think he's so cute. I use him more than once. We're also going to use a sentiment from the Clear Stampin' Die Autumn Whim. This is a gold heat embossed one. We'll adhere a extra layer of cardstock behind that for a little extra strength and stability and a little height, and we're going to add that to the front of our heart here. I'm just playing with placement. You could do the owl next to the sentiment, below it, or above it. I decided to go with above it. And we're also going to take a piece of white cardstock, cut it with a 5x7 Matting Basic Set B largest die, and then emboss it with that same patchwork embossing folder. I'm also going to use the Pearl Luster Gilding Polish again over this to add some subtle extra detail to the embossing on this cardstock. Once I have that done, I'm going to show you again that this is Pearl Luster Gilding Polish, but then I'm also going to add some extra cardstock behind that panel and glue it to a 5x7 white card base. Now this is going to be a landscape card because that's how this heart fits best on the paper. You could do a partial heart and turn this the other direction, but I like the whole heart. I put all that work into all of the ink blending, which honestly was not that much work. And add that to the front of the card. I'm trying to center this. Add some pressure to get that adhered well. And now it's time to start adding extra details. I have 3 of the flowers from the Acorn Acres large die of the month here, and one of the branches of foliage. I have these assembled in the craft stacks next to me. I love those craft stacks. They have made a huge difference in me getting my crafting organized while I'm actually working on different collections. We'll add our sentiment first. This is going to be rather a grounding element for the other pieces. Then I'm going to adhere our owl wax seal above the sentiment. And next to that, we're going to put the foliage and 2 flowers here. I've got that pop of orangey red, and we have a nice yellow flower. Just going to angle that a little bit, trying to keep that in line with the end of the sentiment. I think that'll add some nice balance to this. Then we'll add the red and the yellow flowers. And then I just couldn't help it. I had to add another sentiment. This is from the Sketchy Hexy Better Press of the Month. I'm going to use the Sending Autumn Cheer, which I've glimmer foiled in polished brass foil. And then I'm taking a banner die from the hand folded stitch die from last month. Oh, hand folded something. It was the stitching die of the month from last month. It has the perfect width for the sentiments for this month. And I'm just using that to do some partial die cutting. So I get this banner the length I want it. Just going to run that through a second time to complete our banner. And I use this die repeatedly through the video here to make my banners for my sentiments. Now that I have that completed, I did add a couple extra layers of cardstock from the craft cardstock scraps that were laying on my desk from die cutting this, and that makes it extra sturdy, and we'll adhere that below the first sentiment. So this says, hope this season wraps you in comfort, sending autumn cheer. Now that sounds perfect for a little quilted heart. On the inside of the card, we're going to add another sentiment from Autumn Whim. I have another flower and leaf, and we're going to use antique linen ink, distress ink here, so that it coordinates with the rest of the card. Just going to stamp that roughly centered in our card, and because it's distress ink, it does take 2 or 3 inkings to get a nice solid sentiment here. I'm using my Altenew 2.0 stamp wheel. It has one side that you can remove, so you can put bigger than the stamp wheel items in it, and that's perfect with my 5x7 cards. I often save the inside for last, and we're going to adhere the die and the stamp, or sorry, the 2 dies here on the inside, and there we go. There is card number 1. Card number 2, we're going to play with the Autumn Whim die set. Sorry, clear stamping die set and the stencil. I've done all of the stamping and stenciling, and then I took the coordinating dies and die cut all of those items. And there were 2 of each of these. So I'm going to add some accents to them to add a little extra pizzazz, and then I will have all kinds of little charms to add to all of my projects, or any of my projects. I took a white gel pen to add the white spots to the mushrooms. Now you could make those mushrooms whatever color you wanted. On the little warty spots on our pumpkins or gourds here, I add some, this is the sparkle pen from Sakura Jelly Roll, and I'm adding that to the outlines on the pumpkin and the stem, the center of the sunflowers, to the polka dots on the rainbows, and I'm adding little squiggles on the acorn that has scalloped lines, and on the pine cone with scalloped lines, and on the crisscross lines of the pine cones and the acorns that have those. There is a candle that that has stripes that I'm adding the sparkle to, and then the dotted shaded area of this 5-petal leaf, I add the sparkle, and then I just add little lines of the sparkle to these leaves. Now to the little whirly birds and the not stenciled leaves that are die cut, I just add little lines of sparkle to add a little extra pizzazz. And there are all of the items that I've added extra love to. Next, we're going to take Shabby Shutter's Distress Oxide ink, and we're going to ink blend this entire A2 sized panel. This is heavyweight white cardstock that I'm starting with, and I'm ink blending this so that I have a color that matches the other elements that I've already created. Then we're going to take the embossing folder of the month, Autumn Breeze. Now this is a technique that I have just been fixated on the last month or so. I have a slightly darker Distress Oxide ink that I'm going to add to the embossing folder. I'm adding it to the side of the folder that has the writing on it. and then we'll run that through the the die cutting machine, and look at that. It gives this slightly distressed extra detail. We're also going to take the Spellbinders Splatter White and the Spellbinders and Yasutomo, I have that written wrong, watercolor mixing set. I want the white spatters, and I want the sparkle spatters, and I want the gold spatters on this background. I think it really adds a lot. Now you do have to add a little water to these pans and really work those up. And my white I have in this little pinch bowl that I don't have that I don't clean out in between. I just keep reconstituting it. Now I'm cutting a 3 1/4 by 4 5/8 inch panel out of this because I'm making a 4-bar card, which is 3 1/2 by 4 7/8 inches. We're also going to take the notched corner frames dies, and I took one of the middle-sized dies. We're going to cut some white cardstock and run that through the Autumn Breeze embossing folder again. And then we're going to take, yep, the Pearl Luster Gilding Polish to add a little bit of definition to the white cardstock embossing, which, usually the 3D embossing folder of the month is my absolute favorite. And this month it is the regular embossing folder. I really, really like it. We're also going to use the Autumn Whim stamp sentiments. And I chose a little fall charm just for you. I did also, I'm showing you something I didn't use on this one. These are a couple of the sentiment strips Better Press sets, and they both have these banners that come in multiple different lengths. Now they're really handy for narrow greetings, and there are lots of different lengths, so you don't have to do any partial die cutting. I did ultimately use a different sentiment, and I did cut a couple extra layers with that coordinating die for the sentiment and stacked those up to add a nice thick sentiment. Now we're going to take all of these elements and start assembling our little 4-bar card. I've added extra cardstock behind the main panel. I just love that color combination of shabby shutters and bundled sage on that embossing folder. Oh, turned out so great. I'm going to center this notched corner panel in the middle of that card front. And then we're going to start adding the cute little charms that I chose. Now I'm sticking with that yellow and green color palette. I have the candle, the small leaf, the umbrella, the fern type leaf, and the sunflower. And I'm using my press and seal trick where I had already laid all of these out, added a little bit of extra cardstock scraps behind each of these elements, and then adding glue to adhere them in a nice even line on the front of our notched corner label here. Then we'll add our sentiment right below all of these cute little charms and add my heavyweight block to help that stay adhered well. Next, I'm going to take a little sunflower and one of those little leaves and adhere those to the inside of the card, definitely wanting to keep the same elements as are on the front of the card. And that's card number 2. On to card number 3. We're going to start out with the 5x7 Matting Basics Set B, and I'm using the second from largest die with the Sketchy Hexy Better Press of the Month panel that we created earlier with the stenciling over each of those hexagons. This die cuts about a 4 1/2 by 6 1/2 inch, a little bigger than piece, and we're going to use a gold and white owl this time. We're also going to use the postage stamps embossing folder and dies. It's a emboss and cut set. So you just pop the dies into the embossing folder, and you can do one or both or none of these dies. I'm going to tape them to the inside of the embossing folder, and I'm going to die cut craft cardstock with the frame, and I did cut this with the antique white pearl metallic, but I chose not to use that. Ended up cutting it out of watercolor cardstock because that's what the quilted pattern is done on, is the watercolor paper. And I'm liking that a little better. So I take the Autumn Breeze embossing folder and I emboss that little fallout arch with the Autumn Breeze embossing folder. And I am going to add that inside our frame. I'm also going to use some Golden Hour Solar Paste to add a little extra definition. And I just want this to feel kind of like you're looking through a window and seeing the glow of the evening through that window with the owl sitting on a branch. Now, I did use a piece of white cardstock and just cut a backer for this whole thing so it would be easy to assemble. And I have 2 extra layers of, this happens to be watercolor cardstock because I had some small scraps of it to use up and I wanted that extra heft. And so I'm gluing those frames together and then I'll glue the backer. Now that backer I did not run through the embossing folder. I probably should have because that frame really creates a big indentation. So it's hard for the glue to make contact with that backer. It did ultimately work. I add the drop in. We add a heavyweight block over the top to make sure that frame stays nicely adhered. We'll add some extra cardstock behind this hexie pattern, the sketchy hexie pattern, and center that on our 5x7 card base. This one has a wider frame around it. And then I'm going to finish planning out our little window scene here. I'm going to use this Sentiment Stay Cozy and Spooky from the Gilded Weave Glimmer of the Month set. And I am, of course, going to use that same die from the Hand Folded Stitch, the stitching die from August 2025. So if you're a club subscriber, if you get the deluxe caboodle or you get the glimmer every month, you're going to have a die you can use to cut out that stencil. Next, we're going to pull out the foundry wax, and I'm trying to decide between gilded and statue. And I settle on statue, and we're going to add some detail to this frame. Now, I probably should have done this before I assembled all of the pieces because when you add heat to this, it could warp, and I think it kind of does, but it works. In the end, it still works. So I'm using a generous amount of this foundry wax. Now with the foundry wax, you can apply it with your finger, and then you do need to heat set it in order for it to become permanent. Otherwise, it can just flake off of your project, and it turns this beautiful shiny metallic feature. So it's like embossing without embossing powder. Quite lovely. And you can use this stuff on more than just paper. I primarily use it on paper because that's what I primarily create with, but it is a Tim Holtz distress product that you can use on all kinds of things. Once I have my frame adhered to the card, I'm going to add the owl to the inside of our cute little arch here. I could not wait to get my hands on that frame emboss and cut. Next, we're going to use the Autumn Greetings wreath. This came out last month. It's a continuation of the Susan Huey dies or collection. She came out with a wreath collection last year, I think it was, and this is an add-on for it. I am here for it. I love this autumn one. It is gorgeous. It has the Sentiments Autumn Greetings on it. Has several different pumpkins and gourds and lots of fall foliage. I took a couple of pumpkins here. I'm using this long neck gourd here in a sagey green, which matches that Shabby Shutters ink blending that we did earlier. And all of the colors that I cut these out separate from, these were just waiting for me to create with. It just happens that those color choices match each other. I love it when that happens. I'm adding the branches around this frame so it really does look like you're looking through a some trees in a fall scene to see our cute little owl in that window. Next, I'm going to take that fallout piece from the craft colored frame, and I'm going to add some more of that foundry wax. I want to really make this distressed looking. And I'm just swiping it all around the edges and being generally sloppy about it. That is exactly the look I'm looking for. To clean the foundry wax off of your finger, all you need is a little damp cloth. I'm going to heat the distressed foundry wax all the way around the edge here, and that will give it a nice spooky feel for the inside of our card. Cute spooky, of course. And then we are going to use another sentiment from the Autumn Whim Clear Stamp and Die of the Month. I have cut that out and we'll adhere that to the inside to complete our card. It's very easy to do this, and I have said it before, adding die cuts to the inside of your card does not make it difficult to close, and it really adds some extra detail and fun to the inside of the card. And you don't have to worry about messing up your stamping because you're just adding die cuts. There you go. Hope your night glows with magic. I think that's perfect. On to card number 4. Holy cow, already. We are going to use the Precision Layering A2 set dies, set A, I think that was, and the Patchwork embossing folder. I'm not going to do anything else to that. I also use that same die to die cut another panel that will go on the inside of our card because I'm using a black card base. I'm going to add extra cardstock to the back of that quilt, that patchwork panel, and then we'll adhere that to our A2 sized card base. Next, I'm going to pull out the let's see, that is from the Glimmer. No, I think, well, we're going to use the Acorn Acres foliage. We're going to use the Harvest Magic Cat and Pumpkin and the Sunflower. And we're going to use the Essential Stylish Ovals dies here. I took one of the middle-sized ones. We're going to die cut that from some white cardstock and run that through the Patchwork embossing folder again, 3D embossing folder. And we're going to use some Golden Hour Solar Paste to add some extra pizzazz to that backer. Now the die cut images are going to take up most of the interest on this black and white card. I don't do black and white cards very often, but they do pack a lot of punch. I've added extra cardstock behind this oval and we'll center that up on our card front. Once I have that pretty well centered, I will say that this embossing folder doesn't have a lot of spot to grip, so you do have to be careful when you're doing your adhering because it can really slide around when you think it's done. I'm adding extra cardstock behind some strategic spots on the cat and foliage here. I want the foliage to be able to curl up just a smidge, and I want it to fit nicely behind the pumpkin lid, and the cat. Now I was able to just slip that cat right in the top of the jack-o'-lantern, and I'm making sure that my little pumpkin cap for the cat doesn't get lost in the removal of the press and seal. And I did decide to put it a little lower on the cat's head so that it didn't extend too far above that oval. Now I'm going to carefully peel the press and seal back and add some floral elements to this. Now I had my granddaughter for the last 9 days, and I cannot believe I actually accomplished as much as I did. I finished up the 13 days of Craftoween. You guys have been seeing a whole lot of me lately. I hope you're not sick of me yet. And I managed to, so yesterday, because I'm doing this voiceover on Monday, September 1st, and I'm going to post this right away. So my granddaughter left at about 2 o'clock on Sunday, and between 2 o'clock on Sunday and 1 a.m. on Monday, I managed to crank out all 10 of these cards. That is how easy this collection of products is to work with. Usually it takes me a full day to do all the die cutting, which it did for this one. Die cutting, ink blending, glimmering, better pressing, all of that prep work takes about a day. And then another 2 days to do all of the projects. Not this time. All right, as I was yammering, we finished card number 4. Here is card number 5. We're going to start with tea dye, Lost Shadow, antique linen, and pumice stone, I believe I pull out next. Yep. I wanted to do some very subtle neutral tones, which I did on one of the Halloween cards. I used Lost Shadow on all the layers of an layering stencil set to create a nice ghostly background. Well, I just wanted a very subtle background, but I wanted more than one tone. So I chose some very light browns and some very light grays to do the different layers of the acorn background, acorn and oaks background. And of course, I'm doing a full 5.5 by 8.5 inch panel. I'm not showing you all of the ink blending, just the highlights here. So I did pumice stone, no, sorry. The first layer I did in Lost Shadow. The second layer I did in pumice stone. All of the leaves were the same color. All of the stems were the same color. Now we're doing the antique linen for the last layer here. And I don't remember, did I use the 5th stencil? Oh, I did. Yeah, I used tea dye for the accent on the acorns. And there is that completed stenciling. Then I pulled out the Splatter Effects Sparkle. Now this is awesome. You do have to shake it up a bit, but it's all dilute. I just use the brush end and flick it on the neck of the bottle to spatter this splatter all over the background. It's a little quicker and less mess to clean up than the watercolor mixing pearl, and you get a similar effect. Next, we're going to use the 5x7 Matting Basics Set B largest die again. This is my favorite. We're going to run that through the die cut machine, and then I'm going to pull in the Autumn Breeze embossing folder, and we're going to emboss this, and then I'm going to use the Pearl Luster gilding polish to add some extra definition to that embossing. Now you could leave that step out. It does look good just as a texture on this background, but you know me, I just have to do more. more. This is a 2-inch panel. It is about 7 inches long to begin with. I'm going to adhere that to the stenciled panel, and I'm not adding extra cardstock behind it. I know, I'm not sick. It's okay. I was trying not to make a giant mountain on our panel here because I'm going to layer more on here. I know it doesn't look like much yet, but just wait. I'm lining that up carefully using my grid mat to help me out. I've already added extra cardstock behind our stenciled and splattered background. Now we'll add this to our 5x7 card base. Just using my Barely Arts Precision Glue in the fine line bottle from Spellbinders. Love that thing. And I, again, just refilled that. I go through about a half a bottle of glue of that little bottle a month. That's a lot of glue. Next, we're going to take the Lost Shadow Distress Oxide ink, and I'm going to ink blend about 2/3 of this panel because I'm going to come back and die cut this with a circle from one of the Lisa Horton die sets that came out last month. I did die cut the stitched circle with antique treasured cardstock in the pearl metallic. I said last month. It was last year that this came out. And this is a fun layering set. It is stitched edge circle backgrounds, and there are lots of options here. I just used the larger stitched piece and a circle that fits on top of it. I've added some extra cardstock behind each of these layers, so we have this pearl metallic cardstock frame for our Lost Shadow inset. So this is going to be where our scene is built. And then I have elements from both the large and small die of the month here. We've got the Acorn Acres um, foliage and the cute, no, not foliage, the cute little squirrel. And then we're using a sentiment from the Autumn Whim clear stamp and die of the month. And we're using the cat and some of the foliage from the small die of the month. So I'm going to take these cute little critters. Oh, sorry. I'm going to use that Always and Forever sentiment strips to die cut my sentiment here. You can use whatever sentiment strip dies you have in your stash. I just thought it was really cool that that one die offers many different lengths of the same width to create your sentiments, and it works great for our narrow or small sentiments, period. Sentiment. Now I'm adding this cute little squirrel who's holding an acorn and offering it to our cute little kitty who's giving him, well, it could be the side eye or it could just be the cat looking to one side. I love that these combine together to create a scene so easily. I use the sentiment as a grounding item or grounding element for the cat and the squirrel and all of this foliage. Now I'm using a ton of foliage, but I really believe that foliage brings a scene to life. It is a great filler and really makes your scene so much more beautiful, I think. Now I'm trying to get that last little leaf tucked in behind the acorn, and there is a grass die in the Acorn Acres die set. Here we've got a cute little flower with an extra large center that's glitter cardstock that coordinates with the berries that are tucked in behind the tail of the kitty. Now for the inside of the card, I'm going to take the stencils and I'm going to use Lost Shadow ink to do a very light, more of a the feel of the stencil than the actual solid stenciling. I like to do this kind of faded stenciling on the inside of the card so it's easy to write over, but it definitely brings the design from the front of the card to the inside of the card. You can kind of see the scene developing here, and I did not use any registration marks or any markings to help me figure out how to lay each stencil down, but it's pretty easy. I was pretty much, for the veining, lining them up with the leaves that they lay over the top of. All right, on to card number 6. We're going to start out with a 3x6 inch panel of white cardstock, run that through the Patchwork 3D embossing folder. And then this is the Autumn Breeze. This is leftover cardstock from card number 2. I really loved how this turned out. And I happened to have it laying next to some other elements and loved how they combined. So here we go. I'm going to run this down the center of the 3x6 panel, just using my grid mat here to help me figure out if it's lined up and centered. Cut off the excess. I add a little bit of extra cardstock behind the white panel and glue that to a 3 1/4 by 6 1/4 inch mini slimline card. Now this is the size you want if you want to purchase mini slimline envelopes or cash envelopes. That's often the size that these are called. And I am trying to make my life a little easier. I can make my own envelopes. We all can, but sometimes it's easier when you create enough cards to be able to purchase the envelopes. Next, we're going to use the Stitched Pumpkin Tops. This is the stitching die of the month, and I have one of the medium-sized pumpkins here, some foliage from that set, and the sentiment, Hello Gorgeous. So I've cut out the word hello from the Gold Treasured Cardstock Pack glitter cardstock. I cut out 2 extra layers of heavyweight white cardstock from the Hello die, and I'm layering them all up together to make a nice stacked sentiment. Just going to make sure that this is all nicely lined up. It is going on a white background, so that will disguise some of the oopsies, but I like it to be as lined up as I can. Next, we're going to adhere that to the card front right above the green banner down the center. And we're going to do the same with the hello, the gorgeous part of this sentiment, only on the other side and below the banner. Now I die cut another orange pumpkin, just the detailed portion, and I did not take the center or the stem. I'm just going to add this leaf over the top. I thought that was a perfect little accent there. And that's a great reminder that you don't have to stitch all the time. Next, we have card number 7. We're going to take the Gilded Weave Glimmer of the Month that I foiled on some craft cardstock with the copper foil. I cut this down to 3 by 6 inches. This was a double foiling on a 8.5 by 5.5 inch piece of cardstock. And now we're going to take some walnut stained Distress Oxide and a piece of white cardstock. Again, this is heavyweight white cardstock. And I'm going to ink blend this entire panel. I just wanted a really rich, dark brown for this panel that I'm creating. Then I took out my Precision Layering Mini Slimline Set B, and I'm going to use one of those dies to die cut this panel out and then run it through the Autumn Breeze embossing folder. I'm not going to do any extra inking here, just going to do the embossing. I love the detail that creates. That really reminds me of pine cones, which is what we're going to layer over the top of this panel. Just going to drop that in the center of our card front. I've adhered the Gilded Weave to a 3.25 by 6.25 inch cardstock base. Then we're going to take some elements from the Autumn Whim die set, Stampin' Die set, and the Acorn Acres. We're going to use the Happy, what does it say? Happy Fall from All of Us on the front of the card. I'm also layering the Happy up like I did with the Hello. I have die cut the Happy from the Rose Gold Treasured Cardstock collection, and this is the glitter cardstock. So we've got 2 layers of white cardstock backer and 1 layer of the glitter cardstock on the top. I'm just using my pokey tool to make sure that the edges are all even and to get rid of some of the paper hairs. Now, sometimes I just take my little sanding block to help get rid of some of those paper hairs too. Once I have that all ready, I'm going to add our glitter cardstock piece, just using the fine tip on that fine line bottle from Spellbinders. I kind of have Hero Arts on the brain. I just watched the release for September. I am a subscriber for the Hero Studios, and it's all about squirrels and autumn and critters, and I love it. So if you love Hero Arts Hero Studio, I would recommend purchasing that. It coordinates a bit with this month's Spellbinders. Now, Spellbinders owns both Hero Arts and the Spellbinders things, so I wonder if there's going to be more coordination in the future. I don't know. I'm here for it though. So I've adhered all of those little elements with a little extra cardstock behind each of them to raise them up a little bit. And then we're going to adhere our sentiment pieces. I did the banner below the embossed panel in the center here. It's overlapping just a smidge, and then I adhered Happy, and it looks like it's a little crooked now that I'm looking at it in my hand. And then we're going to take a sentiment for the inside from the Autumn Whimsy Clear Stampin' Die. This says, hope this season wraps you in comfort. And I'm going to take an acorn and a pine cone and adhere those to the inside of the card above our sentiment. And there we go. Slickety-doo-dah. Another card done. Card number 8, we're going to use the Sketchy Hexie for the sentiment. This is me thanking you. We're also going to use a panel that I stamped and ink blended with the Autumn Whim clear stamp and the Autumn Whim stencil, which is the extra if you get the caboodle, Next, we're going to use the Bow and Bell scalloped frame. This came out, I think, in July. This is one of the Lisa Horton collections, and it has this beautiful stitched scallop and a rounded corner for rectangle for the inside. Now, I decided I needed those mushrooms to have white spots on its cap, so I did come in with the white gel pen and add some spots, or fill in the spots on the mushrooms. I have 2 mushrooms to do that on. This is a really quick and easy thing to do. I don't use my white gel pens near often enough, and I'm always surprised when I pull out these Sakura Jelly Roll white gel pens, and they work. I love that. And I do believe they're available in the Spellbinders store. I'll have to double check. I'm going to adhere these pieces together. I've added extra cardstock between each of these panels. And we will adhere this to an A2 size card. I do not do A2 size card bases very often, but I think I have 2 of them in this. Yeah, the kitty and the jack-o'-lantern, and this one in this collection of cards. This came together really fast, especially since I'd already stamped and stenciled that panel. And we're going to add some Color Essential Gems in Smoky Topaz. I thought that went really nicely with the copper embossing on the sentiment. Sorry, copper foiling on the sentiment. And then I did do the copper embossing on the sentiment on the inside, I believe, which I haven't shown you yet. There it is. That is also from the Autumn Whim Clear Stamp and Die of the Month. And I have a couple more of those charms that I've already completed earlier in the video. This is the beauty of batch production. You can just take all of these elements and start adding them to cards. I am not kidding. I sat down and designed, I think, 6 or 7 of these cards in one sitting. Just laid them all out in piles and created my plan for most of this video. Card number 8 was a really quick and easy card. On to card number 9. We're going to use the 5x7 Matting Basics Set B largest die to cut out our matting panel. I'm going to use the Autumn Breeze embossing folder, and I'm just going to run that through. I'm not doing anything else to this panel. I just wanted a nice textured background, and that is such a gorgeous texture. I added some extra layers of cardstock behind that panel before I adhere it to my 5x7 white card base. And then you can see next to me on that piece of white cardstock, which was my planning cardstock, the stitched pumpkin tops. I love these stitched pumpkin tops. They are so cute. And I had them just laying in one of the craft stacks, and they kind of interlinked themselves. So yeah, I went with it. These are already pretty dimensional, so I did not add any extra cardstock behind those pumpkins. I just adhered them down to the card base, and then I'm going to start tucking in these leaves. Now I'm using 2 leaves per pumpkin, and I'm just trying to create some balance with all of the pumpkin, or with all of the leaves, and fill out the rest of the front of this card. There's a lot of white space on this card, but I like it. I think it turned out really cute. Yeah, this month's stuff has been so easy to create with for me, and such variety. I did not do any 3D cards this month. I hope you forgive me for that. Maybe I'll come up with something good a little later in this month. Now, there is early access to the advent calendars that come out today. So if you are a club member, you get early access. So you can order those advent calendars today if you want. I am going to try to put out a video about those too. However, that means that there's going to be lots of extra creating. I do have both of those advent calendars. We'll be doing the Stitchmas daily videos at the end of the month, I believe September 23rd. So if you want to create along with us, I would make sure that you get your advent calendars. And the actual advent calendar, the one that has 24 boxes or 24 things, I would, or is it 25? No, it's 24. Um, we start opening that and creating that on December 1st. So if you need to spread things out a little bit, although I suspect they may sell out. The Craft-A-Ween sold out really fast, and it was so fun. I am just babbling again. There are 2 extra layers of cardstock behind this hello, which is die cut from some gold treasured cardstock, glitter cardstock. And the rest of the sentiment, the gorgeous, is cut from the, no, just the plain old metallic, just the shiny, extra shiny, maybe it's called mirror gold cardstock. Anyway, it's beautiful. Next, I pull out the Peach Blush Color Essential Gems, and we're going to use that to add some extra filler in the white spaces and add a little extra pizzazz. It's amazing what these little gems can do for filling in the white spaces and adding extra interest to your card fronts. Now, I wouldn't recommend putting the gems on the inside of your card, but sequins, if you're using sequins instead, that would work perfect. For the inside of the card, I have another sentiment from the Autumn Whim. This says, "May your fall be full of quiet wonder," which I love. I love that sentiment, peacefulness and nature. It's also from the Autumn Whim clear stamp and die. And the acorns and the leaves are from the stitching die of the month, the stitched pumpkin tops. Just going to tuck that stem right under the stem of the acorn. And that completes card number 9. Can you believe that we are just over an hour into this video and we're almost done? This is a quick 10 card video for me. For card number 10, we are going to use the acorns and oaks along with the 5x7 matting basics set B. I used some Astro Paste to do the detail layer of the acorns on this one. This is slippery when wet. This was stenciled and pasted days ago, but it only took about a half hour for that Astro Paste to dry. And I love the glimmer of that glitter paste. It is packed with glitter. I'm adhering this to a craft card base, a 5x7 craft card base. We're also going to use the Gilded Weave Glimmer of the Month for the sentiments. We're going to use both of them, Boo to You, Sweet Soul, and Stay Cozy and Spooky. We use the hand folded stitch die from last month, the banner die, to cut out our sentiments. And we're going to use elements from the small die of the month, Harvest Magic. We're going to use the ghost and the skull and some of the foliage. And we're also going to use some elements from Acorn Acres. We're going to use that adorable acorn house and the landing pad, the grounding pad for that, and I think an acorn. I am going to take some antique linen cards, Distress Oxide ink, and I'm going to do a fade of this color up this white cardstock because I want a nice grounding spot for our acorn house. Then I'm going to take the arch labels and arch labels and tag dies and die cut one of those that fits perfectly behind our acorn house. And then we're going to take some Distress Mica Stain Spray and in Unraveled, which is a nice kind of antique linen color, and spatter that all over. I just took the nozzle out of the bottle and tapped the straw over the area, and that spattered very nicely. Now we'll adhere that wonky arch here, the arch label and arch labels and tag die. And I'm going to add the acorn house, and I've added extra cardstock behind that. Oh, I almost forgot the grounding element. I like that this creates like a little green pad, a little green lawn for our little acorn house. I'll pop that right on top. There's some indentations that look perfect lined up with the front stoop. Then we're going to add our ghost coming out from behind our cute little acorn house. And we're going to add the skull. This is definitely spooky cute. And then we're going to start adding all of that foliage. We know how I feel about foliage. It really adds a lot to your elements and can bring pops of color and cohesion to your whole card design. I wasn't sure how busy this was going to look, but I actually like how it turned out. I really like how it turned out. I hope you think it's as cute as I do. We're going to add that little pop of color at the right above the acorn house with the berries or blossoms, or cattails, or however you want to think of those. We'll add a cute little acorn laying next to the skull and the Boo to You Sweet Soul on the front of the card under the house. Now I had a scrap of that cardstock left. I cut this down to about 1.5 inches by 4 7/8 inches so that it wouldn't interfere with the fold of the card. And I adhere that just like 1/8 of an inch above the bottom edge of the card base. And then I'm going to adhere the banner that's got our secondary sentiment, stay cozy and spooky. And that completes 10 cards. I hope you enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun playing with all of these products. If you did, please give this a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't done that, and check that description box below for all of the product that I used today. There will be a link to with a picture. Leave me a comment. I'd love to hear what your favorite parts of this video were, which product that really caught your eye. And until next time, here are a couple more videos I thought you might enjoy. Bye-bye.